can't take this anymore.
Who is surprised to see me back? Not me. And my last review, told you I was a collector. Collecting also means finishing what I start. So here we go. Book 2 of Elfquest. This one, honestly, it's kind of a snooze fest. Like, if you want to talk about the structure of a book, this, I mean, even though there's more than 3 acts, 3 books, this is definitely like a middle book where not much happens. The only thing that really goes on is that Cutter, and to some extent, Skywise, overcome their fear / disdain for humans. And then it ends on a more exciting note. But for the most part, this one is like a literal journey. Okay, so if we're talking about how the middle structure, the middle act works, it bridges 1 to 3. So that is about the hero's journey, and this is literally our hero going on a journey. This book only opened, and it has been 7 turns of the moon. Cutter and Lita are now in LOVE, sitting in a TREEKISSING, and they have 2 children, Suntop and Ember, and neither tribe in all of their hundreds of years have seen twins. So I guess that means that Cutter and or Lita are pretty special, especially when you put them together. The instigating incident here is that humans show up. Cutter and his tribe are like, will we never get rid of humans? Will we never be able to find a place all our own in which humans will not exist? The humans that they're talking to tell them that the Holt burned down, or like the entire forest burned down, which Cutter said was going to happen in the first graphic novel, in which he was like, dude, if you burn down this area, the entire forest is going to burn down, which is just as bad for you as it is for us. Well, look at him knowing what he's talking about. Once the forest burned down, all these humans were like, where are we going to go? They eventually did find like another tribe, essentially. But then this particular, I think it was like a quartet, one of the adults kind of goes crazy. And so they get kicked out, which is when they start wandering and they run into the elves at Sorrow's End. But this gets Cutter thinking, because he's like, there has got to be something else, somewhere else. There've got to be other elves, because when the High Ones landed, they couldn't have all just stayed here. We found another group of elves, so we've got to find other elves. We've got to reunite our tribes and figure out what's going on. So this is essentially the quest of Elfquest, is Cutter, who, as I said, is differentiated from his father and sort of his predecessors and even some of his pack because of his imagination, his desire to learn and to know more and just to explore and expand his knowledge of the world around him. And so his quest then becomes to unite all of the tribes. He's like, all right, guys, you stay here. I'm going to go on my quest. I will be gone for 1 year. I don't want anybody to come with me, but of course, faithful Skywise. Well, technically, I think it was Lita who said, hey, Skywise, I think you need to go with him. They journey off. What do they have to do first? Cross the desert. However, when they get back to the trolls' caves, all the trolls are gone. They're like, okay, what do we do now? They go back to where their Holt used to be, and Cutter is like, dude, those humans were right. There is nothing left. Unbeknownst to them, they're being watched. And they're being watched. If you watched my first review, you would have heard the name Picknose. So it looks like Picknose and some other female troll are watching them. But what they want is Cutter's sword, New Moon. Sorry, I just can't. This is not a sword. It's like a really long knife, but they call it a sword, so we will call it a sword. And it turns out that this sword was forged by this legendary half troll, half elf, two edge, which I think it's just so funny. Because when Skywise hears about this, he's like, ew. Which, yeah, that just about does it. When you see the pictures of the trolls and then the pictures of the elves, you're like, how would you guys ever join to create a hybrid? But that is one thing I've noticed about Wendy and Richard Pini is they, whether that was their intended message or not, they are all about inclusivity and equality. This spanning the races and different people groups, different ways of life. Maybe that's what Two Edge is supposed to represent, is people who would never be together actually coming together. I don't know. But Cutter and Skywise are captured. It turns out that the hilt of New Moon unscrews and is a key. Apparently, this key can unlock Two Edge's treasure. So only 3 trolls have escaped, because what happened was way back in the day, before the first novel started, there was a group of trolls. The leader wanted to do one thing, and Grey Mung was like, I don't think so. So they warred, they divided. And the original leader, he and his group went off into the Great White Yonder, Antarctica of this world. They apparently came back while Cutter and the Wolfriders were at Sorrow's End. They took everybody hostage except for Picknose, the girl that he liked, and then the girl that he liked's grandmother. Now they're like, all right, we've got the sword, we've got the key, and now we've got elven slaves. During this period, Skywise and Cutter get these trolls to divulge their plan, divulge all of this information. Unbeknownst to the trolls, these shackles were not created to contain elves. But they are having a really good time drinking, because apparently there's a berry called a dreamberry. In the end of the last novel, it seems that one of the elves had brought some dreamberries with him, and they were able to plant them, and then one of the other elves is like a grower of sorts, and so he was able to grow this dreamberry bush. I don't know if that resulted in more dreamberry bushes. It kind of seems like maybe not, because the trolls are like, hey, we've got this really great brew made from dreamberries, and Cutter and Skywise are like, yes sir. After they're able to escape, they're like, we're never drinking dreamberry juice again. That was really, really bad decision making right there. But their wolves come and rescue them, and then they get away. They are able to retrieve New Moon as well as the key. They are following the lodestone, which is that little piece of rock that Cutter had gotten for Skywise in the first novel. They eventually happen upon the folks at Sorrow's End ride something that's called a zwoot, which is akin to a camel in that it works well in dry heat without a lot of water, but it's not a camel. But I think what Cutter and Skywise essentially find are horses. They just don't know what to call them, but they're not a zwoot, but they'll work. Their wolves are getting old, and that's something that I talked about in the first review. Was I don't know how long these guys last, because these are the only wolves that they've had. Maybe they're only 20 odd years old. I don't know, unless some sort of voodoo is going on that keeps their wolves nice and spry as well. But in this novel, when they find those horses, one of them kicks Cutter's wolf in the eye, and Cutter's already realized his wolf is aging. He's not gonna make it very far. And this is another reason that they're like, we just need to get some horses. Cutter and Skywise, they find the green space. Cutter is in a good mood. I think there's a squirrel stuck in the swamp, and Cutter's like, I'm in a great mood. We have found another green space. We've escaped the trolls. We're on our quest. Let's not take another life. And then the squirrel bites him, and he loses it. Falls into this tepid swamp water, and his bite gets infected. Skywise is like, There was this certain kind of plant at our holt. Let me see if I can find it here. Well, it takes him an extra long time, during which Cutter is come upon by these two humans, Adar and Nana. Of course, he's like, I don't think so, but he's also not quite in a headspace where he can do anything about it. However, his faithful wolf is like, I don't think so. In this kerfuffle, Adar burns the wolf and the wolf runs away, and I'm just like feeling it for this poor wolf. The wolf goes and finds Skywise, who has finally found this special plant. Skywise comes to Cutter's rescue, only for Cutter to be like, no, this woman, she tried to nurse me back to health. Don't harm them. These people are okay. This is a turning point for Cutter, at least, who has a much more open mind than anybody else. What Adar and Nana reveal to them is they're lonely. They're outcasts because he found her. Her tribe lives at the base of Blue Mountain. They worship the creatures in this mountain. And so I guess because that's her background, she's already kind of weird. Anyways, Adar brings her back, and the Bone Lady from his tribe is like, she's evil, you two need to die. Instead, they're just exiled, but they're lonely. Cutter and Skywise, who Nana believes to be, it's the bird spirits, Cutter's just playing into this. They're like, okay, fine. We will help you. You helped us, so we will help you. They go back to Adar's village, and the Bone Lady, who she's like this real ugly piece of work. Where is she? Here we go. This is the Bone Lady. Isn't she something else? But this reminded me also what happened. Sava, who is their mother of memory, who is like almost a direct descendant of the High Ones, she apparently doesn't sleep. She will just go out and explore mentally. She gets caught in something evil. This happened after he and Skywise left. All we know is that the people of Sorrow's End are freaking out. This is what compels Lita to leave, because she didn't leave before because she was too afraid, because this is all she's known. Her life is about peace and harmony, and to leave all she's known frightens her. But Ember is the one who is more like the father. Ember is the one who's going to be the next chief of the Wolfriders. Suntop is, in a sense, more like his mother. So Ember's the girl, Suntop's the boy. He's more sensitive, but he also has this powerful ability to commune telepathically. He tries to bring Sava back, but instead of that, she gives him a message, and he's like, oh my gosh, I have got to get this message to my dad before something bad happens. This is the point where Lita is finally like, okay, I will come, and she joins the rest, or the majority of the Wolfriders, as they go to find Cutter. There are a couple that stay, and of course, all the people in Sorrow's End are like, Lita, why are you going? You are our healer. And they're totally giving her a guilt trip. And I'm like, okay, Beth, breathe. Like, this is all just part of a story, and they have a lot of learning and growing to do too. Back to Cutter and Skywise. So they have brought Adar and Nana back to their people, and they have shown up, and now these people are like, oh my gosh, these bird spirits actually exist, and they're vouching for these two, so we will let them back in. And of course, the Bone Lady's like, absolutely not. There are a couple moments. When you first meet her, your first thought is, she's just a wicked old hag. But then there are a couple moments where I'm like, is she onto something? In the end, I don't think she was onto something, but the chief throws her out. He's like, if you cannot accept these two, then you cannot be part of our village anymore, because these two have the connection with the bird spirits. She's like, all right, if you're not gonna listen to me, I'm gonna take matters into my own hands. She joins forces with this fella called Thief, who turns out he was the chief's brother, and then he did something so terrible that the chief stripped him of his name and threw him out of the tribe. She has promised him great wealth and reinstated in the tribe, and he will have his good name back and his name period. She's like, but what you need to do, you need to get that magic stone that elf wears around his neck. The thief, who we never learn his name, and we never know, I mean, maybe we do later, we never learn what he does that is so terrible that his name is taken away from him and he's kicked out. And he tries to get this stone and he fails, because even though she had put this concoction all over him to remove his scent so that the wolves would not know he's coming, Cutter is quick enough that he is able to turn on the thief, and he cuts his thumb off, and he's like, you guys have too many fingers anyways. The bone woman is like, okay, I'm not giving up, and we have one more chance. Meanwhile, Cutter and Skywise are preparing to go to Blue Mountain. They've got to go to where these bird spirits live, because Cutter's like, those could be other elves. They are led to this waterfall, this cliffside, and he has given the chief strict instructions, do not come with us. Adar takes him to this cliffside, and he's like, here, this is what you need to do. And of course, the whole time, I'm like, if they have to go over this cliff, what's gonna happen to their wolves? Guys, what has happened to me? How I become such a sap, I don't know. The thief, after Adar leaves, the thief comes after Skywise one more time, and they both tumble over the edge. Well, first, he knocks Skywise out. When Cutter tries to come to his defense, Cutter is injured as well. The thief ends up plummeting to the bottom, where Skywise is able to hang onto a branch. But Cutter is having difficulty getting Skywise back up because Skywise has a broken arm and Cutter is still wounded. They are then rescued by the chief, who he had, before they left, he's like, I have a request of you. I just want you to help me with something. To which Cutter and Skywise are like, why do you guys need so much help? Oh, the chief is like, so you guys can't fly. Like, are you actually these bird spirits? Are you lying to us? He kind of blackmails Cutter and Skywise into helping him, and what he wants is the return of his daughter. I guess a year or so prior, the daughter had run away with her lover, of whom the chief did not approve. They run into the Forbidden Grove, never to be heard from again. However, we gotta stop here, because in the meanwhile, Suntop has led the wolf pack in a different direction to get where Cutter and Skywise have ended up. When they get to the rock face, they're like, oh my gosh, these rocks have no magic. They find a skeleton of an elf who Lita is positive is Rayek. But that's not the big deal. The big deal is now, they're on the other side, they're in the Greenlands, and they're just hanging out by the river doing their thing. Suntop is like, oh my gosh, I need to find my dad, like we're gonna be too late, but like this is the place, this is where we need to be. Something up in like a giant bird appears in the air. So just as the thief has got his stone going, so does Strongbow, one of the wolf pack, who, he doesn't talk, he's very stoic, all he does is send, and he's really set in the old ways. But he is their archer. He hits this bird just as Suntop's like, don't shoot the bird. Now, Cutter and Skywise are at the Forbidden Grove. Skywise is still hurt. So Cutter says, you hang out here, my friend. I'm going to look around to see what's happened. And he notices all these like cocoons just everywhere. So he cuts one open and he's like, there's a bird in there. And this bird just comes flying out like nothing ever happened. Then he cuts another larger one and it's a wolf cub. And he's like, oh my gosh. He smells this cub and he's like, this is my kid's scent. So Ember, while Cutter had been gone, had been gifted her first wolf. They had bonded. She brought this wolf who she named Chop Liquor with her. So he's like, I know I'm not crazy, but I need a second opinion. So he goes back to find Skywise, who is being wrapped up by these little like butterfly fairy whatever creatures. Cutter's like, get away from him. Skywise is like, yes, this is Ember's scent. So now they're like, if Chop Liquor is here, my family must be too, because I believe they had gotten one of the little butterfly creatures to kind of tell them, where did this creature, this wolf, come from? Now they're off to find his family, because they were told that 3, so 1 big, 2 small, came into this woods. They find his family, and like, you know, he and Lita, it's been a minute. So they have their mommy daddy time. From there, Lita says, hey, this is what happened to the rest. What happened was, when Strongbow shot that bird down, it was like a massive bird, right? Like, I'm talking something you could ride on. It actually belonged to the bird spirits, which is, spoiler-ish, another group of elves, and they live in Blue Mountain, and they can fly. Like, they literally can fly, and they ride birds, and that is how they go out, and they get food and whatnot. And so, because he killed this bird, this was somebody's mount, and it takes a long time for these birds to hatch and for these birds to grow. And so in retribution, this other sect of elves kidnaps the rest of the clan except for 2 and then a 3rd. So we don't know who the 3rd is, but the 2 are Red Lance and I forget her name, but they're like a pair. And can I just say, I love these pairs. You don't get to know a lot about them, but maybe because I was 10 or 11 and I was like, what? I've never seen this before. Like, these pictures are just so beautiful. Like, I bonded to them, but I've always loved the pairings, and I always wish that I could know more about them. Anyways, they reunite with Cutter and his crew, and they're like, we escaped because we jumped into the water. Lita and her kids escaped because the kids jumped into the baskets that they ride in on this woot, and then Lita like grabbed on, and this woot just like got the heck out of Dodge. Red Lance and his girl, they hid in the water, but they're like, there's one other person who escaped. We don't know who it is, but somebody else escaped, which I was like, I don't know how they knew this, but they did. Obviously, before they leave the Forbidden Grove, they do locate the chief's daughter and her mate, and I'm just like, I don't really know what I'm supposed to understand here, except that they're scared and they're never going to forget their experience. But I guess she goes back to her dad. I don't really know. It's not really explained, but I'm just going to go with it happily ever after. Now Cutter and his people are like, we got to go save the rest of our clan. And this is where we encounter Winnowill, the elves of Blue Mountain, which is our next installment. And she is torturing Strongbow, as well as having kept the rest of the elves captive. And that's where we end. It ended on a really exciting note, but this book was not necessarily exciting in and of itself, but given the level of excitement in the next novel, maybe it's a good thing that we had a breather. What do you think? I'm pretty sure I missed things. We'll just have to wait till Elfquest